Okay, what's up, everybody? We're back, and we're going to do a sprint system today. So we're going to set up a progress bar. We're going to do it the right way, which is not using the UI binds. So if you have anything on a UI bind, you probably want to get rid of it before it becomes a problem. The UI bind is going to essentially run from a tick. So it's going to try and update your progress bars 60 times a second for the entire game, which is not good. So if you have anything on UI binds, try and get them off. I'm going to set the sprint up the right way. And this would be the same way to update any progress bar you have. I already have a main HUD set up, but I'm going to do this as if I didn't here. So I'm going to create a new widget. So if you don't have a widget at all, you want to create some sort of like a main HUD and then basically attach all your widgets to that is usually the best way of doing it. So what I'm going to do is just make a new widget blueprint here, and I'm going to call it WBP for widget blueprint. And I'm just going to call mine stamina because I already have a main HUD in here. I don't want to confuse anybody by using something that's already in here. So you should probably call yours like main HUD or something like that, but I already have a main HUD. So I'm just going to call this stamina. And then I'm going to open that up. What you want to do in your main HUD is throw a canvas panel down. And a canvas panel is going to give you a widget that's essentially going to be the size of your screen. So you can position stuff wherever you want to inside of here. Now on that canvas panel, I'm just going to add a progress bar. So I'm going to go progress, and then we'll see it pop in. I'm going to drop that on the canvas panel, and then we can move this to wherever we want to move it to. You can kind of stretch it out. If you want specific dimensions, you can set your dimensions here. I'm not going to go too much into widget creation with this. I'm just going to do a basic setup here. So I'm just going to move my progress bar down here, something like that. Now you have different options in here. You can do left to right, right to left, fill from center, top to bottom, all sorts of stuff. You can even do custom stuff. We're not going to get into that today. We're just setting up a basic progress bar here. So right above that, we have our percent. So if I scrub through, you can see that that progress bar is going up and down. So that's what's going to happen here. I'm going to just pick a color, and I'm just going to say green, or yeah, we'll do, it doesn't matter. We'll do like a blue. And then what I like doing is just copying this code here. And then when I copy that, I'm going to come up to style, background image, and I'm going to open up the tint here. I'm going to paste that code in. So that will give me the same color on my background as my foreground. And then what I like doing is just dropping it more to black, just making it more darker. So something like that. Okay, with our progress bar set up the way we want, I'm going to compile, save, and I'm going to go to the graph. And then I'm just going to delete this stuff. We don't need that. I'm going to add a function in here. Okay, and this function I'm going to call set stamina. And I'm going to add a input onto this input node here. So if I select the node and then I scroll down here, we can see we have inputs and outputs. I'm going to add an input, and I'm going to call that stamina. And we're going to make that of the type float. So now you see we have a pin right here. We have stamina here. So now we're going to feed our stamina into this. But for right now, we're just going to use that pin there. So I'm going to drag off that, and I'm going to do a divide. And you want to divide by 100 or whatever your max stamina is. Maybe your stamina goes to 150, 200. So just put whatever your max stamina is here. Mine's going to be 100. If you want yours more or less, just put whatever your max is. Then I'm going to grab the progress bar out. We're going to drop it in, drag off, and do a set percent. And we're going to use the function here under progress function set percent. And we're going to plug that in. And then plug in our what's coming out of the divide into our percent here. And then we're just going to return out of here. So now we should be done inside of our widget. So we just made a function that we can call inside of this widget. Okay, that's all we're doing. And we're going to, when we call this, we're going to pass in our stamina to it. And then the stamina is going to get divided by 100. And we're telling it to set that, whatever that value is, as the percent of our progress bar. So I'm going to compile, save that. Now I'm going to go into my main character, and we're going to need a begin play node in here. So I'm going to just come over here and do an event begin play. You might already have one, so you can just add this to your begin play. So I'm going to drag off, and I'm going to do create widget, and we're going to create the widget that we just made. So mine's called WBP stamina, whatever yours is called. If you named it main HUD, just look for that. So I usually start them all with WBP WBP for widget blueprint. And then if I just type in WBP in here, all of my widgets come up that have WBP. So I already have my main HUD. My stamina is the one that I made for this video, so I'm going to pick that. And usually whenever you make a widget, you want to right click on this return value, promote it to a variable, and this is going to be a reference to the widget. So if you need to go into that widget to change anything, remove it, do anything like that, you'll have that reference. So I'm going to just select that variable and just name that my stamina widget ref, just so I know. And now we want to add this to our viewport. So we're going to drag off here and just do add to viewport. So just doing that, we now should have our stamina bar on our viewport. So let's jump in and just make sure that that's working. So I'm jumping in and you can see that we have our widget being displayed because our progress bar is on there. And you can see how the progress bar is not all the way up. And that's because it's getting the starting value that we put in on our set percent bar when we were dragging that up and down. So we're not going to worry about that yet because we're going to actually set that. So we have our widget getting displayed here now. So we're going to want to, let's make a variable. We're actually going to need two variables. So let's make a variable called stamina. And we're going to want that to be a float. And then we're going to make another variable called is sprinting. And we're going to want this to be a Boolean. Okay, now we're going to make a couple functions up here. So we're going to make a new function and we're going to call one, we'll call one stop sprinting. We're going to make another one called sprint. And we're going to make a third one here called, we're going to call this update stamina. So let's do this update stamina first. So this is going to be a function that we call whenever we want our widget to update. So instead of using the bind and having our widget check 60 times every second if it needs to update, we're just going to call this function when we need to update it. So what we're going to do is grab our stamina widget reference or your main HUD widget reference, whatever widget that you put your progress bar on. We're going to grab that and then we're going to drag off that and we're going to look for whatever the function was that we made in here. So mine was called set stamina and that's the one that I'm going to call. So I'm going to drag off this widget ref and do set stamina. And now I just have to pass in my stamina. So I'm going to pass in the stamina there and we're just going to return. So now when I call this update stamina on the player, it's going to get the widget, call the set stamina inside the widget and feed it our stamina that we're feeding into it. So this function is now done. So I'm going to go to my sprint function now. So inside of sprint, what I'm going to do is grab my character movement component, drag off and do set max walk speed. Okay, now when I'm sprinting, I want this to be 600. You might want yours to be different, but I'm going to set that to be 600. And then I'm going to take my is sprinting variable and I'm going to set it to be true right after this. And I'm going to return. So that's all we're going to be doing in here. And then stop sprinting is going to be basically the same thing. So I'm going to actually copy all that, go into stop sprinting, and we're going to paste that in here. And when we stop sprinting, I'm going to have my character go to 175. You might want yours going to a different speed, and I'm going to uncheck is sprinting. So is sprinting is false in here. And we're going to compile and save, and we should be done with these three functions now. So we can close our update stamina, sprint, and stop sprinting. In our event graph, after we create this widget, I want to update it because right now it's just going to grab whatever the last percent was that we put in here. So I don't want that to pick that up. So I want to update it to whatever my current stamina actually is. Okay, so you can see if we start here, our stamina is going to be about halfway. So we don't want that. We want our stamina to be all the way up. So all we have to do is grab that function we made, update stamina, and we're just going to plug it in after we add to viewport. So now it's going to get our current stamina and update it. And we haven't set our stamina yet. So let's click on our stamina, and for the default value, we want to set it to 100. And if you don't have access to that default value, just compile, save your blueprint, and then you'll be able to input the default value here. So now if we jump in, you can see that the stamina bar is now full. So it's all the way up. So we need a input action for sprinting now. So I've already made one in a previous tutorial, but I did delete it from the graph. So basically to make one, we're going to go to where you should have an inputs folder. If you're using a default template, first or third person, you should have inputs folder somewhere. And in there, you should have your actions. So I already made one, but what you're going to want to do is just right click, go to input, input action, name it. I like naming it IA for input action, and then what it does just to keep them all the same, and it makes it easier to find. So once you have that named, I'm going to delete that because I have my sprint right here. Once you have that named, you can go into the data asset, open that up, and you can click new mapping, open it up, hit the keyboard, hit the button you want for your sprint. Again, I'm not going to do that because I've got one right here. So you hit your keyboard, you hit whatever button you want for your sprint, and it'll populate it there. Save that. And then once we're done, we can go back to our event graph on the player, and we can get that input action out. So in your event graph, if you do IA sprint, you'll see right here, enhanced action event IA sprint. So this is what we want. And then we're going to open that up. And then coming off the started pin, okay, this is going to be when we press our sprint key. Okay, we're gonna want to sprint. So we're gonna call our sprint, and then on completed, we're going to call our stop sprinting. We're gonna call our sprint, and we're gonna call our stop sprint. So that should get us moving faster and slower here. So if I walk and I hold shift, I'm now running, and then if I let it go, I'm no longer running. Okay, so our sprint is working, but now we have to hook that up to our stamina bar. So let's make a custom event here. And I'm going to call this stamina drain. And I'm going to make one more while I'm here. So we'll do another custom event, and we'll call this regain stamina. Okay, so we're going to start with our stamina drain. And we're going to start by just throwing a branch in here. And we want to just check if is sprinting is true. So if is sprinting is true, we're going to come out and we're going to set our stamina. So we're going to set that on true. And what we're going to set that from is we're going to take our stamina, we're going to get it, and we're going to minus whatever we want from it. And then we're going to come out and we're going to clamp it. So we're going to do a clamp float. And then I'm going to run that clamp float into the set stamina here. And I want to clamp this from 0 to 100. And the clamp will stop it from going below 0 and over 100. So it's always good to clamp. Anytime you're minusing or adding, it's always good to clamp it. So now how much do we want to drain here? It's going to be up to you. So for me, just kind of doing testing in here, I'm just going to set this to 5 because I want to see a big chunk get taken out. But you can set that to whatever you want. You can come in here and change that whenever you want. After we set a new stamina amount here, we want to call our update stamina function. This will update our widget. So we're just going to drag that in. And then I'm going to do another branch coming off of here. And we want to take our stamina that we just set, and we want to check, is it less than or equal to 0? Okay, if it is less than or equal to 0, that means we have no more stamina here. So we're going to want to stop sprinting. So I'm going to call the stop sprinting off of true. And I'm going to do a set timer by function name here. Because after we stop sprinting, we're going to want to call our regain stamina. So I'm going to click that, copy the name, and we're going to paste that in here. And I'm going to say after, we'll just say 1 second. We can always change the times. So if our stamina, we're draining our stamina, and we're going to keep looping this. So once our stamina hits 0, it's going to come out of true. It's going to call our stop sprinting, which will stop us from sprinting. And then it's going to call our regain stamina, which we haven't set up yet, but we will do that. So now coming off of false, I'm just going to copy this set timer by function name, and we're going to throw it in here. And we just want to change the name of it. So we're going to recall the stamina drain. So I'm just going to select that. We're going to copy that text and paste it in there. So this will be how often you want this to loop. So this function, set timer by function name, is just going to recall stamina drain. And it's just going to keep looping until either we're not sprinting anymore or until our stamina hits 0. And if our stamina hits 0, then we're going to call stop sprinting and regain stamina. So now on our regain stamina, we're going to do something similar here. So I'm going to select all this stuff here, and I'm going to select this set timer, copy it, and we're going to just paste it down here. So when we call regain stamina, instead of coming out of true, we want that to come out of false. So I'm going to move that pin. So if is sprinting is false, meaning that we're not sprinting, because we don't want to regain stamina if we are sprinting. is sprinting is false, we're going to set our stamina. And we want to clamp that from 0 to 100, but instead of minusing, we want to add. So I'm going to delete that, come off stamina, do an add, and I'm just going to add the 5 back that we're draining. You can change these to whatever you want. For now, just during test, I'm going to get my stamina, add 5, clamp it, set that to be the new stamina. We're going to update our widget. And then here, instead of checking is less than or equal to, I'm going to delete that. We're going to drag off, and I'm going to do a greater than or equal to, and we'll plug that into this branch, and we want to check to see if we're greater than or equal to 100. Because once our stamina gets up to 100, we don't want to keep running this code. Once our stamina gets up to 100, we want this to stop. So we're just going to do a check. Are we equal to 100? Greater than or equal to 100? If so, we're going to come out of this loop. If not, that means we're still lower than 100. We want to recall our stamina, our regain stamina. So I'm just going to take that name, we're going to copy it and throw it in here. So we're going to loop this regain stamina. So this regain stamina is just going to keep looping and keep bringing our stamina up until sprinting becomes true, or when our stamina hits 100. Then it will stop this code from firing. So there's a couple things that we have to do up in here too, because as it is now, so we can call right now, we can call our stamina drain when we sprint here, and we can call stamina regain when we stop. But there is going to be an issue here that we have to tackle. Let's just make sure that this works here. Our stamina bar is at 100. So if we sprint, stamina is going down. We let go of sprint, stamina is going to come back up. Okay, so it is working pretty good. Let's make sure that the running out of stamina is going to work. So I'm going to go in, select my stamina. I'm just going to set this to be 20. So I'm going to start with 20 stamina just so I can run it out quicker. And we should stop sprinting, and we do. And then the stamina starts coming back up. So that is good, that's working. It stops us from sprinting when we run out. So I'll put that back up to 100. So now there's one issue that we still have to tackle here, and that is if I'm standing still and I hold sprint, you can see it's going down. So we don't want that. We only want to sprint if we're moving. So when we press sprint, we're going to want to check for something. So I'm going to drag off to a branch. Okay, we only want to sprint if 2 conditions are met. So I'm going to drag off the condition, and we're going to do an and Boolean. So I'm going to right click, I'm going to get velocity, and then I'm going to drag off this vector, and we want to do a vector length. So if I just look for length, we should see vector length come up. This is going to take the vector, convert it to a length, which will give me speed. So then we can come off that now and we can check. So what we're going to check for is is this greater than something? So all we want to check for, I'm not using any kind of a graduated throttle on a controller or anything like that. So I just want to make sure I have speed. So my speed is either going to be 0, 175, or 600, depending if I'm idle, walking, or running, right? So all I want to do is just pick a number that's greater than 0 and less than my walk speed. So I'm just going to do something like 50. And then I also want to do a check too, because this could lead to a problem. So we're going to just avoid it here. I'm going to grab stamina, and I'm going to do a greater than or equal to, and then we can pick an amount in here. And what this is going to do is just basically say like, okay, you can't sprint unless you have a certain amount of stamina. So maybe you don't want the player to sprint if they only have 2 stamina. Maybe you want them, to have to build up 5 stamina, 10 stamina, something like that. Even if you want it to be something low, we just don't want them to be able to sprint with 0 stamina. So even if you put 1 in here or something, I'm going to say you need to have at least 5 stamina in order to sprint. You can do whatever you want there. So now this will check to make sure we have some sort of forward movement. This is just going to check to see if we also have a minimum amount of stamina on the player. So if these 2 conditions are met, then we can come in here and we can sprint. Otherwise, it's just going to come out of false and not do anything. So let's compile and save that. See if that works. So now if I'm stopped and I hold shift, now nothing happens. So I'm not draining my stamina. Nothing's happening. So I need to walk and then hit sprint, and my stamina will go down. And then when I let it go, it comes up kind of quick. So actually, I do want to change one thing here. Instead of calling the regain stamina and drain stamina here, I'm going to use these functions. So I'm going to copy these set timers. And when we sprint, this is going to be draining our stamina. So I'm going to do this. Just think this is going to look a little bit better. So I'm going to give it a 1 second delay here. And the same thing when we let go, just so it doesn't instantly give us stamina back, there'll be a little bit of a delay in there. And I think that's going to look a little bit better. So let's try that. So now we jump in, we sprint. There's going to be a little delay before it takes it off, which is good. And then when I stop sprinting, there's going to be a little delay before it comes back. So I like that better. And if I run the stamina out to 0, we stop sprinting and our stamina bar will start filling back up. And then if I try hitting it as soon as it empties, it won't let me sprint. It has to build up to that minimum amount, which I have is 5 in order for me to sprint. So if I try sprinting as soon as it runs out, I can't. So we can clean some of this up here. I can comment this and say that's my sprint there. We can comment this. So we have our drain stamina, we have our regain stamina, and we have our sprint. So then I can actually throw all 3 of these if I want to into a comment box as well and keep everything nice and neat here. So if I select all of them, we can do that, turn the bubble on, and there we go. So now all of my sprint behavior is right here. So I think that's going to be it. We have a working sprint. So thanks for watching and see you next time.